towards innovation in this space. That was where the policies, laws, awareness, that was saying you need to create more, you need to be aware of the path towards innovation. So when you can take an idea through to prototype, through the market. And finally, I remember in the speech from the CS, there was mention of a critical infrastructure bill. And I know that someone has talked about voluntary participation. How do you see this critical infrastructure bill alone, another one, and play in terms of assuring the robustness of critical infrastructure? So those are the 4 areas that I'd like us to spend 3 minutes each. Then we hand over to the audience. Who wants to go first?
Thank you for those questions. I'll start with the question of awareness on innovation. And I think that if we look at the opportunities for innovation, there are many. If you look at the different hubs, if you look at the different innovation centers that are present in Kenya, there are many that are available. But I think is how do we follow through the whole process so that those innovations actually get to the markets, actually get also out into the public sphere, so that more and more people can use it and more and more people can actually recognize that innovation of Kenya. I think the forum that was held last week in Kenya shows that there's a lot of potential, and there are a lot of individuals, and especially young people, that invest a lot in making those possibilities work. But what do we do with that? Do we take them out? Do the governments actually assist us so that it gets out into the public sphere? And I think that is the element that is important. That is a whole process that one needs to follow through. On the question on IP, I can only talk about IP as intellectual property, and I think that we do need to, on the policy level, to be very specific in what are the options available. Your earlier question, we need to know what are the business models that are available that changes the publishing industry. Those are the elements that we need to take further, so that yes, the publishing industry needs to live, but there are different business models that need to be engendered so that we can actually divorce intellectual property from distribution, from printing, and from other elements, so that each of the actors can actually get their fair part of the cake. Thanks.
Right. One of the questions which you had is whether our e-commerce platforms are secure. And I am sure many of you are hoping to hear the word answer as yes, or if I say no, everyone is going to panic. But in reality, the one thing, having been a network engineer for a long time, is to tell everyone that there is a comment that was given some years back that says, if you want to be safe, you have to be offline. Okay, so that's the background. And the understanding here is that the internet actually was not built with security in mind. Please know that. The internet was not built and designed with security as the fundamental principle. Remember I talked about the principles. It was end-to-end. It was a layered design. Okay? So security doesn't feature. So today, when we talk about security and safety of anything that is online, I would like to say that the only way you can perceive that is it is an ongoing process. Security of any system is an ongoing process. It's not a one-time event. I cannot come today and say, I've put security, it's safe. No, tomorrow it will be broken. Now, let me give an example. There is a system called OpenSSL. I don't know whether most of you know that. OpenSSL is used for securing connections to various sites using secure socket layer. And a few years, well, actually last year, they discovered a bug with it. This was called hardware, right? Why? Because they found a way which would enable someone to break into SSL certificates. And that means somebody discovered this, yet OpenSSL was heavily used. Many times you go to a site that uses SSL and you see the padlock, right? Means they've used some form of SSL system to generate the certificates that will enable the secure encryption between you as the end user and the website you're accessing. Now imagine the engineering behind that being compromised, or the system behind that being compromised. So what happens? Everybody around the world had to quickly go and patch their systems. But for a long time, that's what we had been using. So for a long time, we thought we were safe. And one day we wake up and we realize we're no longer safe. So safety of systems and application is an ongoing process and not a one-time event. There was also another question on the critical infrastructure bill. I think that's a very good question, and one of the things that is important to have is the understanding that without the bills, without the laws, it becomes really difficult for investment to take place. So think about it this way. A lot of operators are putting cables on the ground. And then the next day somebody thinks that you can dig up these cables and use them for something. One thing which I learned the other day is that, fiber is now very useful on the ground because the sheeting that they use is Kevlar. And what is Kevlar now being used for? They dig it up, remove the Kevlar, and they're making bulletproof jackets and they're selling them. So, right? Who would have thought that? Now, if there is no law, how would the investment then continue happening if we cannot protect the investment on the ground? So that is a critical aspect of why we really need the laws. And I can come back to some of the other points later, but I think I'd like to give the opportunity.
Yeah, so the same questions?
Thank you. I'll start with the last question, which was a critical infrastructure bill. I'd like to support also what Michuki has mentioned. The bills are very important because they also help investors to come to the country. But I think some questions that we might need to ask ourselves again is actually who is the one developing the bill, or who has been involved in the creation of that bill. Is Fiona involved? Are you involved in the creation of the bill? So, because you're just in front of me. So,
I'm not sleeping.
yes. Okay. Yes. And then again, some of the things that we might need to ask ourselves. The bill itself is critical infrastructure bill. What is being meant as critical? Do we know what is that they're saying is critical? And what criteria are they using to choose a specific thing as critical? Because to me, I know you'll say internet is critical, but again, we need to know some of the things that are being mentioned. Are there some of the things that are being left out? So, on the bill part, I support the development of the bill, but there are some things that we might need to look around. Efforts towards innovation. I think we are not yet there in terms of innovation, but actually we are going to that future which Michuki mentioned. We are looking at that future in which Michuki mentioned, and that's why we have, I think, labs like iHubs that help innovators. So I think we still have a long way to go, but we are not behind. We are on the way. In terms of intellectual property, this one I look at it again as how are we protecting the innovators in these labs, in these innovation centers? How are new innovations or the guys coming up with new ideas, how are they being protected? Are they being taught or taught how you can protect maybe the ideas that you have come up with? So I think that is it. On the safety of the e-payment solution, again, I'll have to agree with you. Actually, there is no time you say that you are ready safe. So it is a process, and I think of it as you are still starting. Even if you have implemented something today, it's like you are in the beginning of a line. So you need to think of of the next move of another person who is trying to attack. Thank you.
Very good. So that is the story from our panelists. Just a quick mention. On innovation, government announced Information of Enterprise Kenya during the Innovation Week. That has yet been presented. I think they're working through the process. One thing about the infrastructure bill, I think they're going to put it through public hearing because it's a requirement. So I would really suggest that these participants and the entire constituency provides input, including private sector and everyone else. But remember also laws, if they are not implemented, there is no compliance, then that becomes a challenge. Now, then the issue of local content, and I hope that Michuki Mwangi will answer this question: how will we get to that 80% local content in the next 5 years? Isn't it? That would be quite a leap. And there is also ICT has put down regulations on how to do with local content. I suggest that everyone looks at those, critiques those, and offers them feedback. So, the floor is yours. The format is the same. I can see Fiona. She rose number 1, so she'll take it. We do, what my colleague did earlier, maybe take 3 people at a time. May I suggest that you limit yourself to 2 questions, maximum 1 comment. 2 questions, 1 comment. Thanks, Fiona.
Thank you, Panasonga. Mine is a comment, and a comment because I have been talked and talked by them. Make sure I respond. Sorry, Fiona Songa from TESPOC. Mine is a comment that is resulting from being poked and propped by them. Yes, I am part of the team that is developing the critical infrastructure bill on behalf of operators, the ICT operators. The bill is bringing together stakeholders from ICT industry, energy and transport sectors. Those are the ones that the government Gazette notice allowed us to reach out to. And what we are doing is because we realize the critical infrastructure that is being affected is cutting right across. If it isn't the road signs or the barricades on the sides of the road to stop us from driving cars veering off in case of an accident, it's the masks that are being carried to go and be used for scrap metal. So it's a lot of things that are put into play. And what we've managed to do as we're developing the bill, we realized there's a need to involve internal security. So we have involved the Ministry of Internal Security as well, for the very reasons that Michuki has explained. We want to have our final clean draft today, and I'm really trying hard not to multitask during this meeting to look and give my comments for that and still participate in this discussion. But I know by midnight I should have given my input on what has been developed so far. Next week we present to the ministers, the cabinet secretaries, so that they can endorse and approve for it to go for public comments. Now, with that bill, things important for civil society to look at when you're going picketing. There are going to be conditions there that if you make the mistake of picketing and lighting fire on roads, we will fine you. How much does this cost to build a road? That patch of road that you have lit fire on and damaged, you have 100 million, good, no problem. You have 10 million, you cost that, should be ready to do it. Basically what we're saying is rights come with responsibilities. You have the right to air your views, to picket, to do everything, but please carry the responsibility of fixing what you damage. We need to protect our communication infrastructure because our economy is now riding on our infrastructure. When you decide to allow or watch someone damage that infrastructure, you're not helping the rest of us. Let us be a society of people that are concerned about what we are part of. We're so proud to be Kenyan that we want to protect the Kenyans. We want to protect Kenyan things, Kenyan infrastructure, Kenyan image. It's part of our image. Like I kept on saying when I was up there, our culture needs to change. So if civil society is going to be a driver for the change of that cultural behavior that enables us to act correctly, to drive our economy in the direction we want to move in, because the ICT Master Plan has high targets. ICT contribution to GDP of 15 to 20% in the next 2 to 3 years. How do we get there?
Excellent points. Thanks, Fiona. Thank you. Next.
Good afternoon. My name is Mildred Achoj. I am a writer, a poet, a screenwriter, and a festival director of a film festival that's mostly online. So all this information that I'm hearing today is very pertinent because 90% of what I do in terms of work is online. So I thank you for all that information. And I will just continue from where she left off. How do we increase local content? That's something that's really, very important for me because that's where I get my daily bread. And I just have several ideas, but I'm going to condense to about a minute. I'll try. Schools, we need to change the culture of a job is an office job where you have to, go to an office or stay in traffic for many hours to get to the office. We need to educate our young people that there's so much opportunity available because of the internet, and we need to start young. Do not wait for people to reach university. The headmasters meeting that's going to take place, I am hoping that they will really underscore the importance of ICT in terms of even changing the perspective of what a job is. Because when I was coming up as a writer, people are suspicious of me because they were like, I don't go to work, I am always on the internet. So what exactly am I doing? Is it terrorism? So we need to start changing people's perception. And I call that the social infrastructure. Yes, the physical infrastructure is important, but the social infrastructure is also important because we need to change people's minds. If you want to get to that 80%, these young people need to be told that you are the ones who are going to create that local content. It's not people out there. So we need to have that culture of young people being the providers. Encourage people to post things online. I mean, Twitter, Kenyans on Twitter are very active, and if that energy could be directed towards, academic papers, things that of substance, I think that will go a very long way in pushing the content. One last point, I am the festival director of the Rock Film Festival. It's mostly online, mainly because it's a very new festival, I don't have resources, but I discovered that there are several online portals where people from all over the world submit their films to my little festival, which is basically me. And I am getting over 100, I've gotten over 100 films from all over the world just because of these online portals. So in terms of local content, if the local government could encourage such things where local filmmakers and local TV producers have a way of distributing their content online so that these physical roadblocks are done away with. Because honestly, with the way the internet is nowadays, and we saw the statistics, mobile use has increased, the internet use is increasing. There is no excuse for people saying that, oh, I don't know people in the industry. The sky is the limit. Thank you.
Excellent. One of the conversations actually about local content is that our culture, our storytelling. If you look back and see the stories grandmas used to tell their grandkids around the fire or before they went to bed, the entertainment we had. I mean, there's so much that is rich here that put out there would not only provide both, but also define us and assert our space in the cultural space. Thank you very much for those remarks. Next.
I think she has said everything. I don't even know what to say anymore. But it's Gideon Rowe from .Connect Africa, one of the applicants for the Africa domain that is still in the pipeline. I say Kenya is among the countries who are early adopters of almost everything in the world. If you hear something new has come up, especially in the internet, you'll find that it's happening here. And because of that, that question about what is the state of internet and e-commerce, I think when we talk about content, e-commerce will combine both the commercial value and the local content. If we combine those two, then we come up with something that can be sold out of Africa. Well, I see that most of the businesses that we have online, the Jumias, are just, what can I say, the online shops. But we are here to see more of, businesses that will promote the African product, the African heritage, something that will come from Africa. And I think we have a lot that we can sell from Africa, something that can come from Africa to the world. We heard about that lion that was killed, Cecil. Some of those things, and some of those, some of those are, the things that Africa can use it to market itself. So I'm asking, do we have a place where we can have the young people, the university people, go and learn? Because I think what we have is, most people want to start an online business, but they don't know where to go. They'll just find maybe solutions online. But here in Kenya, do we have a place where somebody can go and say, I'll go and be told about how to start this business, how I can do it, so that you do it well from the first time? Because most of the people who have done business say, we went through a lot of losses in the first 3 years, and normally it takes a business 3 years to turn over. So, and then do we have, online, the local online payment solutions? I know we have M-Pesa, and are there more cheaper ways, or say the APIs that can be used by these people to, promote their business and, get the money out of this business? So I think I have too many, but let me stop there.
Excellent. So 2 questions I had. Do we have schools where people can learn on courses, and are there cheaper online payment system? Mulibagua, mpiga makofi. So we come to your question. Next.
Thank you. My name is Bob. So I'll be very quick. We are talking about internet critical infrastructure, and I think, and look at it from an IT perspective on this one. I think we also need to start looking at names and numbers as important part of critical infrastructure. You rarely hear a mention of this important item, but we also know that the first thing that you need to get online, whether you have a phone or any other thing, is a name and a number. Now, Toilem says that critical infrastructure depends on who you are. For example, if I am a user, maybe my phone is my critical infrastructure. But is it a concern if that phone tomorrow cannot access the internet? Probably because it cannot support IPv6 and things like that. So what are we doing, especially even from policy perspective, to ensure that our critical infrastructure is part of our discussion? Because the next digital divide that we're going to see is a scenario where the rest of Africa is on PV4 and the rest of the world is on PV6, and you simply can't get to the rest of the world. And of course, a problem lies right there. So we have to look at this as part of very important critical infrastructure.
Excellent point. Thank you very much. But you, Makofi.
My name is Mesha. The question is on IPR. Recently there is WIPO. They come up with a report that suggests that in Africa, it's only worldwide, only 6% of what is worldwide as intellectual property, 6% comes from Africa. That's so staggering concern. So my question is, what are we doing currently to remain competitive in terms of the content, local content, in terms of developing product in general? And second question. Can we have a centralized legal backing on IPRs? For example, rather than having an application of this organization handling music corporates, this one handling the different aspects. Can we have something centralized that can steer us towards this competitive environment?
Yeah, very good question. Panellists, Makofi. Next.
We don't have stories from our local media houses, bloggers, and everyone from Kenya. The first 3 pages or so. So I'm thinking someone out there is busy telling stories about us as we experience them, instead of us telling you the way we experience it. And some of them, as you see, they even misreport us. So is it a problem that we should just leave for media to solve with the SEO, or we can help the media? Maybe I'll be happy if Mike would have answered this question, but I'll throw it to Jaco, or anyone from the panel.
Excellent. Maria Makofi. Local content. Because what they say, if someone tells your story, they tell it from their perspective. It will be a distorted story. Yeah. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is and I just want to come back to the internet economy. I find the internet, the ICT Authority is not in this panel, but that discussion could probably go to them. I've noticed that most of their projects are run by foreign companies. itax was built by Tata, which is an Indian company, so I'm trying to wonder how we're building local content and the local economy when we can't even hire our own software developers to build our critical infrastructure like itax. And I would like to point out that itax is extremely secure and extremely banking. This is something we've noted and told the authority, but we have people who can build it better here. So why do we keep going to the Chinese and Indians to build our software?
Very, very good question.
My name is Mwanga. I wanted to ask a question on internet resources, and I'll follow up with Bob's comments on the internet protocol being critical internet resources. I want to know what ISOC has been doing to increase uptake of IPv6 in Africa, and because charity begins at home, what ISOC is doing to increase IPv6 uptake in Kenya. We know actually without IPs, there will not be internet. The internet runs on IPs. The next question is about KENIC. KENIC is a critical internet resource infrastructure in Kenya. And I don't hear Toilem say that. Probably it did. But my issue with KENIC is 2 things. First of all is sustainability. KENIC has been in existence for the last 20 years, but it's still like a teenager who has refused to move from their mother's house. It's still hosted by Communications Authority 20 years down the line, and that is a risk, because if CA, for example, is funded by government, it means that KENIC will remain an orphan. Another issue is change management at KENIC. The other day, they rolled out ISOC, and the registry actually died for 24 hours. You could not access a .ke domain anywhere in the world. Is there proper change management at KENIC? Do you have test beds? Do you use best practices when you are rolling out new products at KENIC?
Very good. For purpose of time, the gentleman who is standing with his pockets in his jacket. That's in the pocket. Pocket. What is it? The jacket in the hand. You got the meaning. That is the last one, and then you respond. I'm dyslexic. Okay, next question, please.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Barak Otieno. I'll go straight to questions, some of which were raised during the online discussions. And I'll touch on internet economy and then a bit on critical internet resources. So one of the questions touched on legislation when it comes to e-transactions. We saw comments to the effect that we already have legislation in place to protect the consumers insofar as electronic transactions are concerned. So probably, again, I'll just put this to any of the panelists to give feedback on whether the existing legislation is adequate for our developing industry. And then the other question that was raised was on taxation of electronic goods and services. A lot of people are buying goods on Jumia and the likes. So if you may make a comment on whether it is prudent to do the taxation or not, because the government is increasingly recognizing the importance of electronic commerce. And who knows, someone right might next year decide to impose or put some taxes on those services. Then on critical infrastructure, the question was basically on the state of the internet exchange points in the country from a perspective of the percentage of data that is local. I think it is useful as we encourage local content to know how much content, for instance, do we have from government and how much do we have from the local community, because we may actually be patting ourselves on the back, whereas the business community or the civil society is contributing very little to this. So if we can be given feedback insofar as this is concerned, it would be good. Lastly, on critical internet infrastructure, I understand from the questions that were brought during the discussion that every county is imposing its own levies or taxes on people who want to lay fiber or other critical infrastructure. And how do we tackle this issue if we are looking at the critical internet? If we're looking at the fiber, for instance, from a national perspective as critical internet infrastructure?
Very, very good question. Badia Makovi. Hey, it's okay. We are all together. Next, last person, right?
Yeah, I think I'm the last.
Yeah.
My name is Ken, I work for Global Communications. First, I would like to know the stand of the government concerning cryptocurrencies like bitcoins. Are we allowed to integrate such for some of our clients? And if so, what are the implications? The last one is concerning e-commerce platforms. What is the position of the government concerning encryption? What encryptions are supposed to be supported? And if a client does not have any form of encryption, how is the customer supposed to be protected? Thank you.
Mampari Makofi is the last one. I don't know how we tackle this. What I do is you pick the questions you are comfortable with, especially those ones with KENIC. Then tell them, give it. You begin the rest.
Thank you. The criteria was ones I'm comfortable with. I think there are a couple I will skip. Okay. Let me start with, I think I remember Bob's comment on the critical infrastructure. Where you mentioned DNS as one of the critical infrastructure. For me, I said I'm looking at it at two levels. there's the low level where me as an individual, I see a critical internet resource. And then there is a higher level where now we are looking at how it affects many people. So how it affects people globally. And I think I mentioned four. I divided them into four. Basically, I looked at administration, applications where I mentioned things like Gmail, that is email applications. There's environment which I skipped because it covers electricity, funding, things like roads, which Fiona has mentioned. Then there is infrastructure, which covers connectivities, IXPs, peerings. It also covers security. So that is my perspective. So I'm giving my story, my perspective. That is how I've divided it into. The next question came over about KENIC as a teenager who has refused to move. That was really harsh. Anyway, for me, my answer would be I don't think the location that much defines. We are sustainable, but it's a matter of choice, and maybe that one is a higher level than what I can answer. So, but for me, what I look at it is, pardon? Yes, please. Although I spoke to you.
On the question on KENIC, CISSP is one of the members that has involved, entities involved in setting up KENIC from the word go, when it was first set up. We have continued to support KENIC. We have, when you have a baby, you have to let your baby grow. The way you're saying teenager, but KENIC really has come of age over the time it has had to go through the transition and everything. We are now at a stage where this KENIC is really like a plane ready for takeoff. Give it a few more months. I'm sure by the end of this year we'll have a lot more to report on KENIC and what's happening. Why? Because, for one, the regulator has moved out. It is now purely run by non-regulator stakeholders. We still have government, we still have industry, we still have registrars, we still have academia. So, and I think that is the ideal environment, ideal support base for KENIC moving forward. In addition, CISSP, being the technical community responsible for operations of KENIC, even at the ICANN level, we have continued to support KENIC technically. We are Toilem is the only staff there, but behind him there's a whole CISSP technical team that works with him, that makes sure that technical requirements are met. Yes, things are tested. They are tried offline, they are tried in controlled environments before they are actually plugged in, as per best practice.
Yeah, thank you, John.
Thanks. Good to know you all. Now, I wanted to answer actually that question about you asked about the test beds. Yes, we do have, and the scenario that happened, okay, it was really unexpected. But again, we are currently working on how to ensure that never happens again. It is not good, I'm not proud to say that it happens even to other registries, but because it happened to us, we are looking at ways in which to ensure that it doesn't happen again. So, I understand your concern. Thanks. The next question was regarding what? I think that is it for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. But and everyone they say there's no failure in life, only experience. So if they face a change management failure, you can be sure they won't repeat the same mistake. But thanks.
Thank you very much. How do we get 80% local content and the rest of international? I think basic elements that needs to be taken into account. You have to train people in the different trades in producing quality content. You need to have the right infrastructure in place. You have to have the exposure to international and other local opportunities and creators, and you need a market that needs to be created, and that can be done through incentives, through policies, and many other elements. But I think that the whole industry needs to be seen where people can actually intervene. The remark that was made on that schools should stop teaching us to go to the office, yes, that is important. And I think that is where the whole concept of 21st century skills comes in, where from a school level, learners already start to learn what are these 21st century skills that are working together, being innovative, etc. And I think our curriculum, especially in our needs to take those elements into account. The example that was given also that just by posting things on an international portal, you can actually gather a lot of content. I think it's a good example. By making content available to be used under certain conditions, I'm sure not for commercial purposes, and which shows actually how one could get more exposure for one's work through a film festival in Kenya or in another place. And I think that is an interesting example in sharing content and the impact that it could have. The question where at universities we learn e-commerce, I would argue that it's too late to start learning that in university, and that should start actually earlier, especially as it's a mindset that we need to have in order to be innovative, in order to look at new technologies, in order to see to which extent we can use new tools in order to address our economic needs. IPR, what can be done to remain competent, to be competitive? I think to pay due attention to intellectual property in our policies, in our laws, and put incentives in place so that people respect intellectual property, but also produce content under the right intellectual property regimes, and also opportunities to explore different business models that are linked to intellectual properties. And in terms of international standards and intellectual property, I think one needs to look at WIPO, the World Organization that's looking after intellectual property. There are different regimes that are being promoted, and I think that one should see also how some of these international standards can be localized on a regional level in other parts of the world. I think specifically of SADC. There are even regional protocols that look at intellectual properties, protection of indigenous knowledge and others. So on national level, regional level, one could localize those international standards. The question on others writing about Kenya and that Kenyans do not write about themselves, I think Kenyans do have an opinion on what is happening in their own country. And how can we use technology in order to make that known through credible platforms, credible media institutions and others. Maybe we should turn also to our media, to which extent does our media actually give a voice to our people, to the citizens that have a reaction on things that are happening in Kenya. But I think also it is important that these that we look critically at how we could use existing platforms and in having a voice and internationally to make known what you as Kenyans think and what you feel. and to start looking at different venues to explore that through existing platforms, but also through new platforms that can be developed. I want to agree with the gentleman that talked about the fact that it's important that when we train people locally, we should also give them job opportunities. And I think, again, government can play an important role through incentives by employing nationals and building their skill sets and giving them opportunities to move forward. So I think that policy should be in place, incentives should be put in place, so that when we talk about reducing even the level of unemployment, that we also give Kenyans an opportunity to be employed in those opportunities that actually exist. Incentives is a way that we could address many of the issues that have been highlighted. Also the element of electronic devices, if we tax them or not, I think it's also an incentive that can be put in place. And one should take into account the pros and cons in terms of the issues and devise a strategy that is comprehensive and look at all the elements of ICT integration in our society, not just the infrastructure element. Of course, that is important, but other elements can also be addressed. Thank you.
Very, very good. Thank you. So, in the interest of time, may I suggest that there are certain elements that have not been addressed. One is, are we IPv6 ready? And two, if you think about the laws managing e-transactions, and the other is taxation of goods. So we can focus on those because I think the other areas have been covered. Then we would have answered our audience questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have to say that it's a tough one because I was hoping Victor would be here because a lot of them are more targeted towards ICT government, but I will try my best. All right, there was one question which was more on content. And I will say that how do we increase local content? And I think the answer to this is more connectivity. If you think about it, a few years ago, we had less internet, and all we did is check your email. Actually, when I started using the internet, the only thing we used to do is check your email. And then social media came in, and then we checked email and social media. Now today, if you need a passport, where do you go? Online, right? So the more internet we have, the more it becomes the only place people get sent to do something. And so more internet, more connectivity means, in the long run, everything will end up being moving online. So there are other factors that actually need to get done, and we've been doing them. In addition to that is like having an internet exchange point where local traffic is exchanged, having data centers where local content is hosted, having good policies on terrestrial infrastructure so that it's cheaper to access local content. In some countries, like Nigeria, it's cheaper to buy capacity from Abuja to London than it is to buy from Abuja to Lagos. So, when you have the right policies, then that works in favor of having more local content. An issue we need to address is intermediary liability, because that's becoming an issue for a lot of content people to host content in your country. Because when the laws are not clear, nobody wants to host in your country because they do not want to be liable. And when the laws are clear, then people will be happy to host the content locally because it's clear who is liable when there is infringement. There was a question directed to ISOC about what we've been doing about uptake of IPv6 in Africa and in Kenya. And around the world, we've been involved in what we call the rollout of IPv6. We started with a test day in 2011, and in 2013 we went with a global IPv6. So that was worldwide. And many networks, content operators went and switched on IPv6 permanently. and we've been keeping track of that and monitoring what's going on. In Africa, we are working with KENIC to make sure that they continue to do capacity building and support their work on IPv6 with them. And generally, in our work that we do in the region, including in Kenya, like on IPv6, is to make sure that we keep encouraging network operators to learn. Basically, I don't want to use the word light up, but they already have IPv6 on their core networks. What they're not doing is giving it to the end users. So if you're really nice to your operator, and I can say this because I know it works, if you go to the operator and say, can you give me IPv6, they'll give it to you. I know that for sure because I have IPv6 in my home network, because all I did is write an email to my operator and say, can I have IPv6? And I got it. So they do have it, but since nobody's asking and nothing is broken, so they're not trying to fix anything. So the key is how can we foster more use of IPv6, and we are trying various initiatives, working with TESPOC very closely to see how we can spur that usage of IPv6 going forward. There was also a question on IPR, and I'm hesitant to take up this question because I'm not an IPR expert. And also the questions on taxation on electronic goods and services. This is a very good question, I have to say. And I like this question, but it's not a question that has a very good answer for, because whichever side you answer, you're likely to offend everyone, or rather a certain group of people in that particular side of it. But the way I would like to phrase this is, how do you empower businesses going online? As I've said, with more connectivity, more services go online. Today, the internet has gone to a point where it has provisioned basic services online. The next part is innovation. Now, if we want more basic services to go online, do we want to create barriers, or do we want to remove barriers? Is taxation viewed as a barrier or an enabler? So we have to have that discussion to understand whether we need to tax or not tax, and what is taxable and what shouldn't be taxed. So I like the question. There is really no particular answer, and yes, of course, if you leave it to the government, they need money to fund development, and so they are likely to go in towards taxation. And my best example here would be a study that was done by GSMA on Kenya with respect to mobile phones. When mobile phones were taxed coming into Kenya, there was a very low uptake of mobile phone usage. When the Kenyan government removed mobile phone taxation, the growth was, I can't remember the actual data, but there was over 100% growth in uptake of mobile phone usage, just because of the fact, and they can show you that in the study, they were able to show that in the study that it was a large factor of that was as a result of the fact that taxation was removed on mobile phones. So, again, the question goes back, will taxation be an enabler or a barrier towards progression or uptake of online services, trading, electronic goods and services? Let's see. Yes, so an issue which is currently under discussion, which is a question that was brought up by Barak with regards to counties levying, that are imposing levies on those building infrastructure. This is something we've had, and I'm now wearing my hat as a board member of TESPOC, and this is something that is being discussed and engaged with the ministries and working together with the counties to see how this issue can be dealt with. So, yes, we are aware, and this is something that's currently being followed up on. So, maybe Fiona has some updates, but she can talk about that later on. There was another question about cryptocurrency. Oh, this was also a very, very good question. So, you had three good questions, Ken, which I really like. Cryptocurrency, like Bitcoin. You know, what can we use it? What are the implications? So, here, again, when there is no law, what does it mean? It's a gray area, right? Now, the one thing I like about what we have and other people don't get to experience is we have a very flexible government. You may say this, but look at where we are on the internet. is the fact that our government is very flexible. M-Pesa happened without laws. We bent the existing laws to make M-Pesa happen. That's the reality, right? If you talk to them, he will tell you, we bent the existing laws to make M-Pesa happen. And everybody else has been coming around the world to see how did we make M-Pesa work. So it means that since it's a gray area and there's no law around it, there's an opportunity for us to make it work because we have a government that's willing to listen and try something. ICTA is there. Fiona will hold your hand and take you wherever you need to go and get it done. So I see that as an opportunity. Just the fact that it's a gray area does not mean you shy away from it. It means deal with it head on. Just take it and run with it. What encryptions are to be supported? Again, and customers, there is no encryption. We don't have rules and laws and regulations about what encryption to use. The only country I've seen that's very particular about this is the US, when you're importing goods and services from there, software rather, more specifically, and hardware. And they are particular about the level of encryption that is on those devices and the software. We don't have that here. We haven't reached there yet. As I said, this is 2015. So if you want to care about that, then again, take Fiona's hand. She will help you walk that path. But as it is, if you put the highest encryption possible, that's fine. Your customer will be happy. I don't see any challenge because the law does not say no encryption and it does not say limit this encryption. So you apply it as best as possible, and as long as you're safeguarding and securing the content or the access for your customers, nobody is going to take you to court for encrypting and securing your customer data. In fact, some of the laws and licenses that CCK gives require as Safaricom was mentioning in the morning, require that data to be secured. And security needs encryption. It just doesn't go up to it doesn't define the levels, but it is there. So doing it is right, not doing it is wrong. If you like us to help, or if you like that to be defined, then Fiona is here, work with her, and she will help you get that done too. I think I'd like to stop there.
Yeah, very, very good question. I'm sorry, we are given an hour and a half. We are there, I think. We are there. Good question. Though we started late. Reserve those questions, maybe for the next session, and then we can have a chat. Please, if you can hold it. I want to thank the panel, but as we summarize, there was an issue about not supporting local IT industry. I remember the innovation event. The president clearly said that government will be sourcing up to 40% of IT-related services from local industries, which means we have 40% participation requirement for opportunity for government projects. So be on the lookout for that, push and find that out. There was also a question that wasn't answered, which was we have too many IP-related organizations, copyright, the anti-counterfeit, the KPE, and others. That question has been raised in the forums I've been to, and I think there are people tasked with government to see how you can bring this under one umbrella. So that may be coming, I don't know. On the issue of Bitcoin, there was a contest that was launched by Barclays the other week, and I believe the CS was there, where they have asked for innovations around this blockchain type technology that is using Bitcoin as a way of creating trust in the supply chain. So again, as my colleague says here, that's an opportunity for innovation. And I think that the points he made regarding the vacuum with respect to laws and regulations are important, because nobody will take you to jail because there is no law that bars you from doing that, especially where you may, like M-Pesa, come up with something that is useful to the country. Now, I want to summarize and thank this team, but also finish with a quote. We have opinion, we need to articulate. We need to articulate where people can hear it. Because this will respect local content, being defined by other people. Someone once asked if a tree falls in a forest and nobody saw it, did the tree actually fall? I want to thank you for your patience. You didn't sleep. I want to thank the panel for their very useful contribution and being on target with respect to the subject. I hope we have done some justice to it. Nothing will exhaust in the time we had everything that we should have responded. Thank you very much. Thank you again, Monsieur. Thank you.